Good day. In this video, I'm going to illustrate to you the vertical and horizontal asymptotes of rational functions through the table of values and graphs using the basic rational function f of x equals 1 over x. Okay. Now, as mentioned from the previous videos or previous topics natin about rational function, a rational function is not defined at certain values of x for which the denominator equals 0. Pansin ninyo, dun sa mga previous videos natin, kinukuha natin yung restrictions of x. Now, yung restrictions na yon, hindi pwede maging value na x because that will make rational function not defined or undefined. So that restriction plays an important role in finding the vertical asymptotes of a rational function. At the same time, in graphing the rational function in the xy plane. Okay? Yung mga restrictions na yon of x, the graph of rational functions may increase or decrease without boundaries. Okay? And using this f of x equals 1 over x, we're going to determine the behavior of this rational function as x approaches to its values of x, which is the so-called restriction. Okay? So ano ba yung restriction nito ng ating f of x or function na to? The restriction is x should not be equal to 0 because if that happens, we have undefined yung ating rational function. Therefore, the domain of this function is all real numbers. Okay? The domain is x such that x is an element of a real numbers except x equal to 0. Okay? So, yun yung kanyang restriction. Okay? Ang restriction niya, hindi pwede maging 0 yung x natin. The question is, ano kaya yung nangyayari doon sa ating function as x approaches 0? To the right and to the left of 0. So, ibig sabihin, ganito. This is x equals 0, di ba? The y-axis. Okay? And this is y equals 0. And this is the origin of the xy plane. Now, alamin natin kung ano nangyayari sa kanya as x approaches 0 to the right. As x, dito. As x approaches 0 from the right. At dito naman sa kabila, as x approaches 0 from the left. Okay? Okay. So, pag nalaman natin yung behavior of the function as x approaches to its restriction doon sa kanan at sa kaliwa, we can determine the graph of this function. So, ano ba nangyayari sa kanya pag papalapit siya sa 0? Galing sa kanan, siya ba ay nag-i-increase or nagdi-decrease? Okay? Ano bang nangyayari dun sa ating function? 1 over x. As x approaches 0 from the left, siya ba ay tumataas o siya ay bumababa? Okay? Yun ang ating aalamin, yung behavior of the function as x approaches 0 from the left and from the right of x equals 0. Okay? Okay, so let us determine the behavior of the function f of x equals 1 over x as x approaches 0 from the right. Ibig sabihin nun, we're going to substitute values of x na positive values of x kasi yun yung nasa kanan ng mga values of x. Okay? Tingnan natin kung anong nangyayari kay f of x as x approaches 0. Okay? So, maglagay muna tayo. Dito na lang tayo mag-start. 2. If x is 2, okay, if x is 2, y or f of x is 1/2, 1 over 2, diba? Or 0.5. Okay. If x is, let's say, 1, so papalapit ng papalapit sa 0, coming from the right. Okay? The value of f of x is 1. If x is 0.5, the value of f of x is 2. Okay? X is 0.1. Okay? The value of x is 10. Okay? If x is, let's say, 0.01, the value of x is 100. Maglagay pa tayo. Okay? If x is 0.001, the value of f of x is 1,000. Okay, analyze natin. So, as x approaches 0, so papalapit na papalapit sa 0, right? Ang nangyayari kay f of x is palaki ng palaki. Okay? So, in other words, as x approaches 0 to the right, so in symbol, we write x approaches that symbol 0 plus. It means to the right of 0. Okay? 0 to the positive means to the right of 0. Ang value ng y natin, ito is f of x, yun yung y. Y is palaki ng palaki, approaching to infinity, positive infinity. Okay? So, yun yung behavior ng function natin. So, ibig sabihin, if x is 2, y is 1. If x is 1, okay, sorry. If x is 2, f of x is 0.5. Yan, dito. If x is 1, y is 1. If x is 0.1, 10. If x is 0.01, 100. So, papaganon siya. Yan, ano? Yan. So, pataas siya ng pataas doon. Habang papalapit ng papalapit siya 0. Okay? So, this is the table of values na nagpapakita na pag papalapit ng palapit yung values of x to 0 from the right, y is increasing indefinitely. Sabihin, pataas siya ng pataas. Okay? Okay, let us now determine the behavior of the function f of x equals 1 over x as x approaches 0 from the left naman. So, sa kaliwa. Alamin natin kung anong nangyayari kay f of x so that we can determine the graph of this function. Okay? Substitute tayo ng values of x, papalapit ng papalapit sa 0 na yung ating values of x coming from the left. Okay? Let's say x equals, anong values of x to the left of 0? Negative numbers, right? So, let's say negative 2. If x is negative 2, itong ganito, the value of f of x is, that will be negative 0.5, okay? Okay. If x is 1, f of 1 is 1 also, okay? If x is 0.5, negative 1 to, sorry. Negative 1. Negative 0.5, that is negative 2. If x is negative 0.1, that's negative 10. Negative 0.01, that is negative 100. Dagdag pa tayo, negative 0.001, x is negative 1,000. So, ano nangyayari? Sa graph niya, habang papalapit siya sa 0 from the left, pababa ng pababa yung balon, nagdi-decrease naman yung ating curve o yung ating graph of the rational function. So, let's say this is 1, this is 2. So, ito, pag ano naman siya? Ha? Mapaba naman siya doon. In other words, as x approaches 0 to the left, yon, minus sign ang gamit. Anong nangyayari kay y o kay f of x? Si f of x o kaya si y, yan na, f of x naman gamitin ko, is approaching to negative infinity. Okay? So, ganito yung graph ng ating function. Mapapansin nyo, hindi siya pwedeng dumaan dun sa x equals 0 kasi that will make the rational function undefined. And that value of x, that restriction of x, is actually the horizontal asymptote. Okay? X equals 0 is your it's my mistake. It's the vertical asymptote. Okay? Yan yung ating tinatawag na vertical asymptote. Okay? So yung restriction na yon ni x sa denominator niya is actually the vertical asymptote of the rational function. Okay. Question is, ano ang nangyayari dun sa ating function f of x as x approaches positive infinity or x approaches negative infinity? Yun ang aalamin natin. Okay? Kasi dito sa table of values na to, itong dalawang table na to, nakita natin habang papalapit sa 0 yung ating x from the right, si function is approaching, or f of x approaching to positive infinity. It increasing without bound. Okay? And as x is approaching to 0 coming from the left, yung ating function is approaching to negative infinity or it is decreasing without bound. Okay? Ang alamin natin kasunod is ano yung behavior of the function f of x as x is increasing indefinitely to the right and increasing definitely to the left. Okay, I have here now two tables. Now, alamin na ngayon natin kung anong yayari kay f of x as x approaching to infinity, positive infinity, or x approaching negative infinity. Ibig sabihin, ano kaya ang nagiging behavior ni 1 over x habang palaki ng palaki naman yung values ni x? Okay? Paano yun? Ang dami lang. So, mag-substitute tayo ng values of x. Palaki ng palaki naman. Okay? Let's start nating value, let's say 1. If x is 1, f of x or f of 1 is also 1. Okay? Okay. If x is, let's say 10, f of 10 is 0.1. If x is 100, this is 0.01. If x is 1,000, this is 0.001. And if x is 10,000, f of 10,000 is 0.0001. So, tingnan natin kung anong nangyayari sa kanya. Papansin nyo, as x approaches positive infinity, palaki ng palaki siya. Positive ang values of x. Yung ating f of x, paliit ng paliit. Actually, papalapit nga ng papalapit sa 0. Therefore, f of x is approaching to 0. Okay? How about this one? Let's say this is yung negative values of x naman. So we have, let's start with negative 10,000. Muna. Para makita natin. Start with negative 1. Sa kaliwa naman ng 0. Negative 1. This is negative 1 also. It's negative 10. Negative 0.1. Negative 100. Negative 0.01. Negative 1,000. Negative 0.001. And negative 10,000, we have negative 0.001. Okay. So, anong nangyari naman dito? Kapag si x naman ay approaching to negative infinity, o paliit ng paliit ang values niya, okay? as x approaching to negative infinity, anong nangyayari kay f of x? Approaching to 0 also, di ba? F of x approaching to 0. So, pag grinap natin yan, so ito yung positive infinity, di ba? Pero ito yung negative infinity. So, ibig sabihin, pag palaki ng palaki ang value ni x, si y papalapit ng palapit sa 0. So, palapit ng palapit siya doon. Pero hindi siya magta-touch doon. Ano? At si x naman, habang paliit ng paliit ang value niya, palapit ng palapit niya sa 0 rin, yung y. Okay? So, therefore, y equals 0 is your horizontal asymptote. Okay? Hindi siya magko-cross doon. Okay. So, gawa natin ng summary, yung mga values natin. So, here is the summary of the table of values na ginawa ko kanina. So, we have here, as x approaches 0, ito yan, to the right. Ito yung x equals 0. Habang papalapit siya sa 0, coming from the right, yung ating f of x is increasing without bound. Okay? Meaning f of x is approaching to positive infinity. Okay? And as x approaches 0 from the left, ito, palapit sa 0. Okay? Yung ating function f of x is decreasing without bound. Meaning f of x approaching to negative infinity. Okay? These two. So, ang ibig sabihin nun, itong 0 na to, that is your vertical asymptote. Okay? At yung isa naman, as x approaches positive infinity, palaki ng palaki yung value na x, papansin natin, papalapit naman ng palapit yung f of x sa 0. Okay? Palapit ng palapit sa 0. Isa pa, as x approaches negative infinity, yung ating f of x, papalapit din ng palapit sa 0. Pero hindi siya didikit doon. Okay? Siya hindi rin didikit doon. So, ang ibig sabihin nun, yung y equals 0, which is the x-axis, is actually your horizontal asymptote. Okay? Ito yung horizontal asymptote. Okay? Okay, what else? Hindi nalilimutan ko. Okay, so that is the equivalent graph of the function f of x equals 1 over x. Okay. It's okay. Ito pa. Also, para ma-check din, ma-verify din, kung ito talaga yung horizontal and vertical asymptotes, if you substituted 0 to f of x, 1 over x. So, 1 over 0, we have undefined. Okay? So, isang bagay yon para malaman natin na yung 0 is the vertical asymptote of the rational function. How about for the horizontal asymptote? For the horizontal asymptote, y equals 0 meaning f of x equal to 0. Check natin. If f of x is equal to 0, so that will be 1 over x. 0 equals 1 over x. We have x times 0 by cross multiplication, we have 0 equals 1. This is a false statement. That false statement is an indication na hindi pwedeng maging 0 yung ating value of f of x. At kapag hindi siya pwedeng maging value niya ay 0, it indicates that that value of y is the horizontal asymptote of the rational function. Okay? So thank you. I hope you learned the vertical and horizontal asymptotes through the table of values and graphs using the basic rational function f of x equals 1 over x. Thank you.